Good morning and welcome to Prepper Nation. As always, thank you for being here. I appreciate you listening to the rambling, to the ranting, whatever you want to call it. Hopefully, you get something from every single video. If it's only one thing, I've done my job, folks. Not that I consider this a job by any means, but you get what I'm saying. Thank you also if you're sharing this out, shooting a thumbs up, subscribing. If you're in the Coffee Club or Patreon, I appreciate it very much. There's some exclusive content coming for you folks very soon. So this morning, we've been doing lists all week. And, top 5 lists, top 10 lists. And if you don't know that, where you been, son? You been living in a cave? It's Thursday. So we're gonna continue the trend this morning. And this is a question that I get asked quite often because I will do a video and I will say, and it's partially my fault. I'll say, man, people don't understand how bad things are about to get. If people understood what was coming, they would be prepping like their hair was on fire. And then I will see comments and questions. John, what exactly is coming? Can you please explain? Yes, folks, I read every single comment on this channel. Every time content posts, I read every single comment. If it's a troll, I ain't got time for it. I just airlock them. You know what I'm saying? But I read every comment. It is what it is. And so I'm going to answer that this morning. I'm going to give you, in my opinion, now again, and I say this all the time, as I sit here swigging on Bones coffee, I'm not the end-all be-all prepper. I'm not Nostradamus. I have no crystal balls over here. This is me looking at the trends, both historically and recently, looking at the United States of America specifically and trying to figure out, okay, what's coming next? And I think every prepper should do this. You shouldn't obsess over it. You should not spend 20 hours a day looking through, because there are rabbit holes. There are rabbit holes, and you will waste a lot of time and, quite frankly, a lot of your life chasing things down rabbit holes that you cannot change one way or the other. But I do think you need to be informed because you need to be prepared for what's coming. So I'm going to go down my top 5 list. This is in order of likelihood. And if I've missed something, if I'm wrong about something, if you would add something to the list, let me know down in the comments section. Again, I read that. Number 1, the most likely scenario for the United States of America moving forward is a total financial collapse. And I'm going to go ahead and throw out a hot take here. I think it would be far worse than what we saw during the Great Depression. And let me make a case for that really quickly, okay? Number 1, there were far fewer people in the United States, less mouths to feed during the Great Depression. Number 1. Number 2, people were naturally homesteaders. People knew how to survive without going to the grocery store in many cases. And that's just not the case in 2024, right? And then finally, most of the stuff that we produced as a nation, or that we consumed as a nation, I should say, was produced here in the United States. That's no longer the case. The jobs that we have now, quite frankly, they don't compare to the jobs back then. You had jobs at the shipyards, for example, back then, as opposed to jobs working, the counter at Bojangles. And I'm not putting anybody down for anything. I'm saying it's harder to support a household working fast food than it is working, a blue-collar job that pays a lot of money. So I do think a financial collapse would be far worse than the original Great Depression for so many different reasons. And I'll hear this a lot, and this is good on you if you're one of these people. I'm one of these people. Well, I'm not worried about it. I don't have any money tied up in the stock market, or I don't keep a lot of money in the bank. And again, good on you. I don't like to play with money, period. I ain't got much to play with, but I don't like to play with money. I'm certainly not playing the stock market. Because if you take a look at the stock market, people like the Pelosi's, they always win. People like us, we're always going to lose. I mean, it is what it is. You might get lucky here and there, but it's kind of like a casino. Eventually, the house wins, you lose. That's how I view the stock market, okay? Because we're not privy to information that the elites have. It's just the way it is. Keeping money in banks, I just don't like to do it. I just don't trust banks. I understand banks probably have 10 or 15% of the money that they claim to have. You know, everybody sets up an account, everybody throws in, let's say, $20,000 into a bank, in fantasy land, because it's Biden's economy right now. And we think, well, they got everybody's money, but the reality is they don't have 85% of those people's money. They've loaned it out. They've played the stock market themselves. They've stacked silver and gold. I don't like other people playing with my money, in other words. And that's what banks do. But herein lies the problem. If we see a total financial collapse, everyone is affected. Every single person listening to this right now will be heavily affected. You may not lose money in the stock market. You may not be locked out of your quote unquote FDIC backed bank that has 100 years to pay you back. And, the doors be chained shut and the servers being taken offline. But you're going to be heavily affected. You're still going to be paying $40 for a loaf of bread. And I don't know that people understand this. When there's a total financial collapse, your paper fiat currency is virtually worthless. We've seen this with every single financial collapse, with every nation over the past 200 years. You can't give money away at that point because it's not real. People understand it's not real. Merchants don't want it. Again, there's a reason that bread will cost $40. Then what are you going to do financially? At that point, you had better be producing because you ain't going to be consuming too much unless you're just super rich, super wealthy, or you've got a lot of actual tangible assets, silver and gold and barterable things stacked up. So I think total financial collapse is imminent because number one, the national debt, obviously, but number two, the amount of debt per household. People are living on credit, and credit is debt. People are living in debt. We're debt slaves in this country. Can I get an amen? And the bottom is falling out on that. So it's imminent. The collapse is imminent. Number two, the second most likely. This may ruffle some feathers, but it is what it is. I got to speak the truth, my truth at least. Again, if I'm wrong, let me know. A second national divorce, not a revolution. All right, I've said this in the past, but here, listen, just in case you missed that message before. In order for there to be a revolution, like we're seeing, for example, Bangladesh right now, they didn't like the government. They didn't like the tyranny. The young folks, the old folks, they banded together. They overthrew it. And they're like, we're not putting up with it anymore. You have to have a spirit of revolution running throughout the country. We do not have that here in the United States of America. Some people will say, well, it only takes 3%. That's false. It might take 3% to stand up and fight. And I would even question if we have 3% who are willing to do that in 2024. But here's the thing. Those 3%ers are standing up to fight. You still have to have the spirit of revolution, which means your countrymen and women still have to believe in the cause pretty wholesale. If you go back to the Revolutionary War, what you're going to see is a vast majority of people wanted freedom. They wanted revolution. You had some people who were sympathetic to the crown, who were British until the end. They supported the redcoats, but there weren't many. There weren't many. There were a lot of people that would help the 3%ers, help the militias, put them up in homes, quote unquote underground homes, feed them, arm them, equip them. This is how they were able to, one of the reasons that they were able to defeat the British. The British could not understand, how are we getting beat by such subpar numbers? The spirit of revolution was there. Another great example, the occupation of France during World War II. Far superior army. And the Germans take over France. You would think that would be the end of the story, but no, the French people did not want to be occupied. So they banded together, they got really smart about it, and they fought back in very smart ways. Herein lies the problem with the United States of America. It's a tough pill to swallow, but we need to go ahead and open it up, and swallow it this morning, son. Half of your country, half of the United States of America, does not want to be capitalist anymore. Get on social media. Type in the term capitalist. Look at the search results. Half of your country is cheerleading for communism. There's no spirit of revolution. There's no we're coming together to fight the tyranny. It's more of a we're coming together at some point, I think, to fight one another, to determine, do we remain a capitalist country or are we going to become a communist country? And that's just the truth of it, folks. I don't agree with it. I don't like it. I know that the young folks have been gaslit and they don't understand what communism is. I'm with you on that. But they're still demanding it. You see it all the time in protests. You factor in the folks that are here from the Middle East to cause chaos. It's a communist tactic. They're trying to overthrow the basic institutions of the United States of America. I said this 4 years ago. They're going to attack the traditions and the traditional institutions of the United States of America. It's straight out of the communist playbook. Just saying. Number 3, plays right into it. I think that you are going to see a heavy shift toward communism, not socialism, communism in the United States within 10 years. So it is what? 2024. By 2035, we'll say, because this year's almost over. 2035, we're going to be so unrecognizable that we're going to look like modern day China. And you can bank that. I don't particularly like banks, but bank that one. Because that, folks, that is coming. A hard push and a hard shift toward communism. I don't know how violent that push is going to be. I don't know how many people are going to accept it at first, but it's coming. Promise you. Number 4, and this is kind of a weird one, but I need to mention it. A pandemic-sized event. A lot of stuff was learned during the pandemic by elites. Okay? A lot of people are going to want nukes on this list, but here's my thing real quick, okay? The banker wants to control the monopoly board. That's your elites, the bankers. They never lose. They don't want to tear half of the monopoly board off and throw it in the trash, which is what nukes would do. They just want control. And I think during the pandemic, they learned if they introduce some sort of a health scare or a health crisis, or maybe some other type of crisis. You can go back to 9/11. You can look at the Patriot Act. People were handing their rights over. They couldn't hand them over fast enough. Here, please take my rights. Please stop the terrorists. Same thing was happening during the pandemic. Here, please take whatever you need. Can we just get back to normal? There's a sense of power in that. And this is the kind of power elites need to maintain control and to swap us out, if you will, into a communist country. I'm telling you, there's a huge event on the way. I'm not one of these dudes that's saying it's going to happen within 72 hours or this week. next week, but I'm telling you, it's coming, and it's going to dwarf the pandemic. It's going to make the pandemic look like a joke. It's going to make 9/11 look insignificant in comparison. There is a huge event coming where they are going to grab people's rights wholesale. And they're not going to have to do a lot of work because most people in this country are going to willingly hand their rights over. That's a huge problem that we have in this country. And number 5, I'm not going to say World War here because every time I say World War, you get the folks out there and they get teary-eyed and they start pearl clutching and they're like, no, we're always talking about World War III. It's not going to be World War III. So I'm going to dress it up for you if you're one of those people. We're going to put a fresh set of panties on it. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? We'll put some garters and a petticoat on it, and we'll dress it up just for you because I know you don't like the term World War III, okay? A widespread, prolonged, multi-front war. I mean, it's the same thing, but we'll call it that because, again, I don't want to boogie-woogie you this morning. A widespread, prolonged, multi-front war. The war in Ukraine's not going anywhere. Sorry, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. Russia doesn't want it to go away. NATO doesn't want it to go away. It's not going away. The war in the Middle East, I mean, it's been thousands of years. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. These people are not going to come together, sign a piece of paper, and get along. It's not happening. Israel doesn't want it to happen. The Palestinians don't want it to happen. The United States doesn't want it to happen. Russia doesn't want it to happen because they're a huge backer of the other side. South China Sea, there's a huge conflict coming. I don't care what people say. I don't care what people think on that. Listen, there's too much wagging the dog, too much saber rattling. Something is going to go down. It's a world war, but again, we're not going to call it a world war this morning. I'm going to spare you, okay? I'm going to spare you the boogeyman words. But a widespread, prolonged multi-front war is coming. It's already here in many facets, but it's going to intensify. Now, this is a problem for many of you because I want you to think back throughout history. Have we ever had, let me get this straight now. I don't want to offend anybody. Have we ever had a widespread, worldwide, prolonged, multi-front war in which nobody had enough soldiers? Think about it. Think back to the Great War, World War I. People were being forced to fight. The government didn't care. Governments were just throwing people into the wood chipper, right? World War II, same thing. Throw them into the wood chipper. They'd be all right. Vietnam, even. Throw them into the wood chipper. We don't have, as the United States, we don't have enough bodies to fight the kind of war that we are getting ready to see. Elites aren't just going to walk away. They're not going to just stop playing war all of a sudden. No, they're going to force you or your kids or your grandkids to fight their war. How do I know? Because that's what they always do. People are going to be affected by this. There will be a lot of propaganda introduced at first to make you feel like, or your kids or grandkids, to make them feel like they're doing the right thing by signing up for military service. There will be a lot of incentive. Right now, I think there's a $50,000 sign-on bonus, or so I'm told. I keep hearing on the commercials and things. But it's not working. People aren't taking the bait. They're not just going to stop having wars, right? We talk about the military-industrial complex all of the time and how elites got to have their wars in order to make money. You can't have wars without soldiers, and if you don't have soldiers and you can't convince them with the carrot to go and fight, then you get the whooping stick out and you whoop them until they go and fight. You understand? They're going to force people to fight these wars. And every single person listening is going to know somebody or be related to somebody, or perhaps be that somebody that gets drafted and shipped off to one of the multiple fronts. And I'm telling you, that's what's coming right now. Let me know what you think in the comments. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking Trump and Harris. 5 guarantees for each of them should they win the presidency, should they win the election. Can't wait for that conversation. Y'all take care and God bless.